President Joe Biden says that he will give legal status to thousands of undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. This will apply to people who've been in the country for at least 10 years and would allow them to work legally. Now, Biden has bypassed Congress using an executive order to give over 500,000 spouses of U.S. citizens this new legal status. Some on the right not happy about such a move, writing on X, "So is the plan for single Democrats to marry illegals so they can become citizens, vote, and create a permanent Democratic majority? The Biden administration's policies are destroying our republic's constitutional framework," others saying. "Stop him. This is horrible, sickening. Biden behaves like a king," etc. Executive orders mean nothing when a new president comes in.
This comes just weeks after the president cracked down on migrants seeking asylum in an aggressive attempt to bulk up his standing on the border ahead of the November elections. He announced an executive action at the beginning of June that will temporarily shut down asylum requests when there is an average of 2,500 crossings per day over a 7-day period. Here he was on June 4th.
After weeks of intense negotiation between my staff and Democrats and Republicans, we came to a clear bipartisan deal. It was the strongest border security agreement in decades. But then Republicans in Congress, not all, but walked away from it. Why? Because Donald Trump told them to. He told the Republicans, it has been published widely by many of you, that he didn't want to fix the issue. He wanted to use it to attack me. That's what he wanted to do. It was a cynical and an extremely cynical political move, and a complete disservice to the American people who are looking for us to not to weaponize the border, but to fix it.
Well, what do you make of this policy?
I mean, look, President Biden makes a really good point. If Republicans had signed on to the Thune legislation that came out of the Senate, there wouldn't be an executive order that had to be issued. Republicans had a plan that they were going to put forth, and Democrats were on board. It was only because of Trump blowing up that process are we now at this point. Republicans are certainly going to take this to the courts, and it's probably going to get overturned. But in the meantime, I think it's a smart move for Democrats.
Well, I don't know if it's a smart political move. Biden is so far behind Trump on the issue of immigration specifically. Clearly, the tide has shifted in this country. All Americans, Republicans, Democrats, are clearly concerned about the impacts of illegal immigration and so on. I personally don't. So I was checking what the current policy is, because obviously you can apply for a green card to be, if you're not an American citizen and you want to marry an American citizen. Now that process, if you illegally entered the U.S., you're supposed to go back to your home country, apply, and then enter. This involves like 500,000 people, and then you can't work. And this is what always bothers me about some of the right's rhetoric on this is like, look, we want the illegal immigrants are here.
Yes. And
do you have what I think are valid concerns about being net detracting, being welfare, taking advantage of services without paying into them. But the way to fix that is to make it legal for them to work, to contribute to our economy and our country. And so I like that this is going to be moving in that direction so they can do work here. I understand the point about, jumping the line and, what about people who went through the process fairly to get a green card? You're going to reward people who entered illegally, but, making them go home just to come back, like, what does that actually accomplish? There's just some massive bureaucracy and like the massive government bureaucracy it takes to verify that they did that. I would rather just save those tax dollars, I think. And I think if a lot of people thought about it a little harder, they would too. I had a tweet yesterday that I'm still getting dragged for. I responded to J.D. Vance saying...
I saw that tweet.
Yeah, it went pretty viral. J.D. Vance said, not having 20 million illegal aliens who need to be housed, often at public expense, will make housing more affordable for American citizens. And I responded that, okay, but if you deport 20 million illegal immigrants, I mean, some of that, houses are built by American laborers as well, but there are also, illegal immigrants who help build houses, who help grow food, who work all of these jobs, and you are going to make the price of buying a house more expensive if you get rid of all of them. There's no, there's that. And if you're worried they're being housed at public expense, then just I would get rid of whatever the public housing, I would get rid of the government support system, or I'm fine making the government support system smaller or not available to illegal immigrants, or legalizing them so they have the same benefits as everyone else. I don't believe in giving them special benefits, but we do a lot. And then people are calling me saying I'm supporting slave labor or something. I'm like, well, actually, you're these people are willing to work, and you're saying it should be illegal for them to do that. So that's like, slave labor is by definition when you force someone to work. I'm not forcing anyone to work. These people want to work, and you're prohibiting it.
Yeah.
So
when I was in law school, I had a chance to go work at a migrant camp and help them make sure that they were protected legally. And the conditions that those people were working in were so horrible. And it's because there was no government protection. There was no ability for the government to make sure that they were earning fair wages, or that they weren't being taken advantage of. Yes, people are here illegally, but we need them to come out of the shadows. I think this is what is a Band-Aid approach to being able to allow people to come out of the shadows.
And I'm sorry, this is a politically incorrect thing to say, but those conditions you describe, they prefer those conditions to the conditions in their home country, to the economic conditions.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're living in Venezuela,
it's still
Ecuador,
preferable. So they would rather be, by their own choices, prefer this situation, and it helps drive our prices as consumers down, and you or the government wants to say that should be illegal. I think the economic arguments against immigration are so confused. The national security arguments, the fears of terrorism or of people coming in and voting and changing like the cultural or legal composition of the country, I don't think those are ridiculous arguments on their face. The economic arguments just don't make a lot of sense.
The quickest way to tank the economy and make inflation go up 1,000% is to deport 20 million immigrants in this country. I mean, like you said, these are the people that pick our food. These are the people that help build the homes around the country. We've got to deal with the fact that there are people here who, we do have a homelessness problem. We do have a national security issue with our border, so we've got to secure that. But there are people here who are not going to just kick out.
Right, and then people will say, well, but Americans should do those jobs. I'm like, okay, you want to?
We don't want to.
Everyone, the issue that people are most upset right now with is inflation.
Yes.
Is the high price of every service, of groceries, of homes, of education, of healthcare, of insurance, of everything. That is the number one concern of Americans. If you did this, you would raise the price of all those things dramatically, substantially. It's just not. It's not a good plan, guys. I don't know what to say. I know it's not popular, but it's not a good plan.
It's not. And look, immigrants do the jobs that most of Americans don't want to do, and so there's got to be an honest reckoning. As a Democrat, at first I was very critical of Republicans for their talk about how they wanted to close the border and our border crisis.
Yeah.
But I've got to admit, as we've gone on, I see the national security threat. I see what's going on in the country, and we do need to secure the border. But we also need to come up with an approach of how we're going to address what's going on in Central America, the poverty, the fact that cartels have taken over these countries. And basically, our ally, Mexico, has become a narco state that's failed right on our border. That's something that we're going to have to deal with, because people aren't going to stop immigrating to the United States until the countries that they're in are stable countries.
Right, and as even if we make it a lot harder, we have a nice big wall, anything of that nature, they're still going to try. So we might as well. We have to come up with a legal pathway so that we can vet the people. So it's easier to come in legally, and then we can vet them. And if they're criminals, if they're dangerous, absolutely we should exclude them from the country. I don't think we have to just allow anyone to come in. No one feels that way in the country.
It's an honor to be here.
It is, and it will enrich our country for the most part to have a lot of these people, but we still can exercise control over it. But we don't have any control over it now because the process to do it is so broken.
Yeah, and I think that the Thune bill, while it wasn't perfect, I think both sides, Democrats and Republicans, were upset with a lot of the language and legislation in there. That's how democracy works.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a little bit of what they want, and you build upon it.
More Rising right after this.